my baby.
I'm Dana Denha.
And I am Melissa Bondi, and this is Adventures in Parenthood, where we take a ride on the roller coaster that we call parenting.
Grief is a raw and real part of every person's life, regardless of age. Some people experience the gravity of loss before they are even old enough to truly understand it. But learning how to cope with the loss of a loved one is imperative to everyone's mental and physical well-being. Melissa, have you had to deal with loss in any way with Bryn? Our girls are still pretty young, but I know Keaton's had to deal with a couple losses already in her short life.
We're pretty fortunate that she hasn't had any major deaths yet. And I say major meaning like immediate type family. But I know she still will mention our pets that we've had. And they had both, her dogs had passed away, and she was young, but she looks at pictures now and she still references them, even though she barely even knew the one. And the other one passed away a couple of years after, but she still talks about the dogs and she loves them randomly. Dana, she'll randomly bring up the dogs. We have a new one now. And so she like puts them all together sometimes when we're talking about dogs, or she'll tell someone she has a new dog, or when we got the dog, she'll say, because our other ones died. And she's just very, very forward with that. So
that's unusual, because in my experience, it's the opposite, where, Keaton lost her grandfather at a young age, but I don't think she really remembers it at this point. I remember dealing with it at the time and like preparing her for the loss of it, but it didn't have an emotional effect on her because I think she was too little to understand what loss actually meant, and that losing someone means never seeing that person again. But then this past summer, we lost our cat that has been around forever. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about when he was alive, if I ever said like, oh, our family, me, you, and Dada, and she'd be like, and Pax, she would always mention the cat. She'd say, and Pax, there's 4 of us. She would always like make him a part of the family. And then, I think his death was traumatic for the whole family personally.
Sure.
But when, nowadays, the only time I hear her, she doesn't say his name really. I'll say something like, because we have a new cat now too. And I'll say, oh, that sort of reminds me of Pax, or I loved when Pax did that, because I think about him all the time and I loved him so much. And I think she did too, but I think it's hard for her to talk about him now because she thought of him as like a brother or something. You know what I mean? He was like her like a little furry brother. And then he was just gone and we had to watch him. She was there when he passed, when we had to do euthanasia. She was a part of it. And she was really strong. And I was really proud of her, honestly. And on that note, I think we should actually talk to our guests, because we're going to be talking about grief today. There's a place locally that knows how important communication is when it comes to death and the grief process. Joining us is Bree RV, Ellie's Place Ann Arbor Branch Director, and Michelle Lamarand, Ellie's Place Ann Arbor Community Board Member and former family. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd really like to start with, from both of your perspectives, to talk about what Ellie's Place is and what it means to you.
Ellie's Place is a healing center for children and teens in our community that is offered free of charge. We greet folks here to support them through their grief journey. Our primary grief support systems happen on site in our Ann Arbor location, where teens, child's aged 3 to 18, come and they can sit with their peers and talk about the death that they've experienced. And those happen 1 night per week. In addition, we also provide off-site school-based programs for our children in partnership with our schools, and those are called Ellie's Group. And then lastly, we offer clinical consultations, so we can help support our children, teens, and families from that first phone call.
In my experience with Ellie's Place, I got to experience all those amazing things. My husband passed away in 2014, and our children were 2 years old and 7 years old at the time. He passed away unexpectedly of a heart attack at the age of 45. And at that time, we were just really unsure where to turn. I was really struggling to find support for young children. And I remember driving by the Ellie's Place billboard that you see on 94 that you look at and you go, wow, I hope that's never me. And it was. And it was actually through my daughter's school in Dexter that mentioned Ellie's Place. Are you familiar with Ellie's Place? It's an incredible organization, and they gave us a pamphlet at that time, and I couldn't get in touch fast enough. And once I got in touch with them, I was partnered up with a coordinator who helped us decide what night of the week would be good for us. I really had no idea what to expect. I was in about 6 weeks after he passed away, so still in my really heavy grieving period, trying to help my young children work through the same process. And we met with Ellie's Place. They partnered us up with a night and our groups. So my daughter at that time, she was old enough to attend, but my son was still a little bit too young. So Jillian, she went into a group of her peers of other, I think it was 7 to 10-year-olds, Bree. Do I have the age grouping right? Who also lost a parent. So it was really incredible. And then myself, I went into a spousal support group with about 8 to 10 other adults who had also lost spouses. And it was just that family we didn't really know we would ever need. And now looking back on it, almost 8 years post our loss, I can't imagine going through our grief journey without the support of Ellie's Place.
Ellie's Place actually offers services to adults as well, because you said you were in a support group as well.
Our mission is children and teens. And so they come to us and they are divided based on their age. So we have preschool, like preschool and kindergarten. We have an early elementary age group. We have an upper elementary, so that'll be your 4th and 5th graders. Then we have a high school group and a middle school group. Where our adults, we support them based on type of loss. So we have, like Michelle mentioned, a spouse partner loss group. We have a child loss group. In addition, we have an other significant loss group. So that would be individuals that may have lost a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, a friend. And then we also have other stigmatized loss. So what we have found is individuals who have experienced death through drug overdose, homicide, suicide have unique conversations and unique stories, and they're experiencing, all grief is different and we're all going to experience it in a different way, but there's a group that's specific for those type of losses as well.
I appreciate that you mentioned so many different aspects of it, though, because I think a lot of times, like in Michelle's case, for instance, when you have young children, you can kind of just bury your own grief and not really process it the way that you should, because you're taking care. I can't imagine having a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old and then having to just like do it all alone, and then you're probably just like, whatever I can get my mind off to keep my mind off of this loss, I'm sure was where you were at in 2014.
Sure. Survival mode.
Yeah. And, you talk to a lot of people and people are weird about going to support groups and like getting that help. But then when you talk to someone that actually does it, it really makes a difference.
Huge difference.
We have 4 locations across the state of Michigan. Our mother branch, if you want to call that, was started in Lansing, so Capital Region. We have a location there. Our Ann Arbor branch, we came to Ann Arbor in 2007. We have a branch in Grand Rapids and also another branch in Flint. We have no geographical restrictions in terms of if you want to drive to us, whatever branch is closest. Again, we're a free service. So that I think is just when someone's experiencing a loss, and we hear this time and time again from our bereavement coordinators is, one of the first questions that is asked, well, how much is this? Or do you take my insurance? Or do you need to know that? And to be presented with, we got you. And thanks to our many donors in our community that we are able to provide this service for as long as a family needs, free of charge. It's just a huge sigh of relief. And Michelle, I don't know if you want to share anything.
Absolutely. I think there were a lot of things that were shocking after losing my husband, but one of them was certainly all the hoops to jump through to try to find out, insurance coverage and all the things. So to really, exactly like Bree said, to be told, no, we don't need your insurance. We don't need any paperwork really much from you. We want to meet you. Come on in. We want to meet your children. And just really welcomed us with open arms was just a breath of fresh air. Really. It was really nice because you when you're grieving, when you're going through any type of grief, it's like you just want to get through the grief. You don't want to deal with
Right.
red hoops and paperwork and stuff. So that was really incredible. And to there's a lot of uncertainty that happens when you lose someone. Financially is obviously something that is scary to go through. So to have this organization open their arms and say, no, it's free, is just it's a really incredible organization that you don't find anymore, really. There's not a lot of that out there.
We're going to pause the conversation just for a quick second as we take a short break from our chat to hear some words of wisdom from our local sensei as we kick it with Keith Hafner.
Hey there, it's Grandmaster Keith Hafner from Keith Hafner's Karate. I hope you're all doing really well. I've got a secret tip for you, and if you can manage to do this with your kids, it will make life easier for you and better for the kids. Here it is. Never, ever argue with children, especially your own children. Now, kids from a very early age learn the effectiveness of drawing people into an argument, and it's a way for them to sort of elevate their relative position, because peers argue. Usually people who have more intelligence, more authority, more responsibility don't argue with people down at a lower level. And so do not argue with children. Now, everybody asks me, well, how do you do that? My kids argue about everything. Everything I say to them turns into an argument. Here's the secret part. You go like this. And you just quit talking. Mom, can I go to the mall with my friends? Not today. But Mom, all my friends are doing it. But you let Susie go the other day. Why can't I go? See, she's trying to draw you into an argument. Now, yes, there is a time, I think, to explain and to teach and to clarify, but usually it's not right then when the issue is on the table. So all you need to do is to just stop talking. Now, if you wonder why your kids are this way, it's because you taught them to do it. You taught them that it works. You've taught them that sometimes there's some opportunity for them in engaging in this. It'll take a little bit of momentum to get this thing turned around, but just stop arguing. Let your yes be yes. Let your no be no. And eventually they'll learn that arguing doesn't work. Nobody ever really wins an argument anyway, even among peers, even among two adults. An argument never works out. It never wins. Never argue with children.
We're back with Ellie's Place, Ann Arbor, and we were just talking about all the great services available. But what I'd first like to know is, when was Ellie's Place originally started, and why was this need so important in the community? Because I can think about my own daughter, who's a 5-year-old, and we've dealt with grief in our family of like a grandparent. And most recently, we lost our beloved pet. And I noticed that she was really young when we lost a grandparent, so I don't think she remembers a lot about it. But the pet thing happened recently, and I find that a lot of times she just doesn't want to talk about it. And I think that's probably pretty normal for kids. And maybe that's why Ellie's Place is such an important piece to this.
You hit the nail on the head with that one. And oftentimes I should say, it's that peer support. So whether it's talking, listening, right, is very much a part of that too. And I can get a little bit more, but your first question was, how do we get started? So I mentioned briefly that Ellie's Place started in Lansing over 30 years ago. They celebrated their 30th anniversary last year.
Congrats.
And I know, I mean, the number, we've served over 30,000 children in the state of Michigan, which is just incredibly remarkable. Our founders, Betsy and Woody Stover, who now reside in Ann Arbor, they were living in Lansing at the time. And their 11-month-old daughter, Ellie, she died. So she had 3 older siblings at the time, and Betsy and Woody, along with mental health professionals, community members, saw what the loss that they were going through, and trying to figure out, okay, how do we help our children? They are grieving very differently than we are as adults. We're trying to find them support and the help that they need. So they traveled across the country, visited various different grief centers to try and explore what could they bring back to the Lansing community to honor their daughter's legacy. And that's really how Ellie's Place got started. It started in the basement of a church, very grassroots, with the assistance of the Junior League in Lansing, lots and lots of volunteers. And Ellie, so her given name is Helen Louise Snow Stover, but shortened for Ellie, E-L-E, also is symbolic in that Betsy wanted to help, it needs to be more than just my daughter, Ellie, right? So she's looking through the dictionary as she would tell the story and trying to find that, an acronym. So embracing loss effectively. And I think when you think about Ellie's Place and the work that we do, that truly is it. We are helping people along their grief journey, helping them embrace their loss and move forward with their grief. And I know, Michelle, that is one thing that you say and that stuck with me from the very first time that I met you. And if you wanted to kind of talk about that.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that I didn't expect from my daughter as a second grader when her dad died is that she was the only student in her school, and certainly in her class at that time, who had a parent who passed away. And I didn't realize at that time that it was, every child processes it differently, but for my daughter, it was embarrassing, when only mom was coming to pick her up every day. Where's your dad? Where do you have a dad? And that was one of the toughest emotions for her to work through. But every week when we went to Ellie's Place, she got to walk into a room of her peers, her age, who also lost a father or a mother. And it like what that does for a child to remind them that they're not alone, that their grief is so isolating. Grief can be such a lonely emotion to experience and go through alone, because none of my friends have lost their husbands. I mean, they have now because I have other friends that have experienced loss, but at the time, no one understood what I was going through. So for a child, it was even more intense for her. So that really just it was a place that she just felt welcome to share her emotions, to share her story openly. It was, we had been going for about a year when she entered third grade, and National Child Grief Day came up in November. And her teacher, actually was a great friend of her dad's, encouraged her to stand up in front of the class and let the class know about Ellie's Place. And without having attended for a year, I don't think she would have been able to do that. And she got up there and she said, "No child should grieve alone. No one has to be sad alone. There's a place for you to go that you can feel sad with other people who understand you." Yeah. And that was incredible.
Like, just the way you're explaining it definitely sounds welcoming and warming to those who need it the most. And it's very, do you consider it like the best kept secret, or are people aware?
Hopefully not.
This, right?
We don't want it to be a secret.
No, I just didn't know that. How do you look for volunteers, or is it simply like, do you have your staff and then you work with those who, seek assistance?
Actually, all those things and more, right? I think our secret gets out, if that's what you want to call it, is through word of mouth. People who have either utilized our services are involved with us through the work that we do within the community. Like Michelle said, the school systems, we are very active in the schools knowing. And when you think about it, if your child is of age to go to school, those schools have the resources and want to help connect people. And they're really some of the first individuals, the teachers or the staff, to recognize, hey, something might be going on with Sally, like, something going on at home, or maybe the parent is contacting the teacher to say, we just experienced this loss in our family. If you're noticing something in my son or daughter. So yes, I think our community, those who are involved with our organization, them sharing and getting the word out there. I mean, before the social media and all the other ways of which we were able to communicate, right? It's definitely word of mouth. So we're very fortunate for our community and for people to be openly sharing the work that we do and connecting the dots and getting people to us who need our support.
Do you do that on social media as well? And I know you have a nice website. Do you have social media
We
websites?
do. Yep, we are present on both on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, as well as our website. Our website's www.elliesplace.org.
Well, we're going to be back in exactly 60 seconds with more on Ellie's Place. We're back with Bree RV and Michelle Lamarand, and we were talking about Ellie's Place and all that it has to offer. And Ellie's Place actually has a new and improved location, right?
Yes, we do.
Why don't you tell us about what it's like now? And there are still virtual offerings for those of us, you can go into the facility and you can take virtual support groups as well.
So currently we are offering on-site programming. During the pandemic, just like everything had to shift, we had to shift as well and did the virtual groups, but we are back welcoming our families on site, attending schools that we are currently partnered with. So we are in person and meeting. So we are very happy to be back in our new building. We had a wonderful capital campaign that I cannot say enough about those who were involved in making what it was a dream a reality, in building our very own home for healing hearts is what we like to call it. And it is just that. It is a home. You walk into this building and immediately you feel the warmth of the colors, the woods. You're greeted by this backdrop of beautiful woods that lines the back of our building. There's, of course, hearts. We are very much about hearts, and they surround the entire walls.
Yeah.
You open up into what is called our Potluck Room, and that is when it's currently on pause, but our families join us for the very first time, and they come in and they sit down and they have a meal together. And it's really an opportunity for families to connect with them amongst their own unit, but also other families who are experiencing grief. And then they go into their group rooms. And again, they're all very calm, warm, welcoming, not sterile. And again, we want people to feel comfortable. We want them to feel safe to share and listen about their individuals who have died and the feelings that they're having and the grief that they're going through.
How do you work with those individuals who might not want to share at first?
Yep. Well, the saying is it's okay to pass at Ellie's Place. So when it's not our journey, right? It is the child or teen's journey and the family's journey when they come here. So when they're ready, we're here, and we're here to kind of walk with them and stand beside them and support them and listen. Make sure that all feelings are okay. And whether that's just listening, the peer aspect of the work that we do is really so important because there's that modeling that kind of goes with that. So if we have an individual that is coming to us for the first time, and one of the activities that we do to open group is called opening circle. And so individuals come, they get into their groups and they sit in a circle and they share their name, their person who died, and if they want to, and know how they died. And so from that very first go around, they are making connections and they're seeing the person, to either side and across the room say those words that are often maybe some of the hardest words to say.
Yeah.
My name is Bree and my friend died.
Right.
And this is how it happened. And so, they could go around and just pass because they're not ready to say that yet, but they're learning from those who have been maybe coming for us a little bit longer. The average time that a child or teen or family would stay with us is about 9 months. So, there's some that stay much
3
longer
years.
than that. Yes. Right. And then there's also some that, they come, they get what they need and they're ready to move on. But as children and teens go through their life and those milestones, they know that they can always come back to Ellie's Place as well, that we will be just waiting in the wings if they need us.
Why people should really take advantage of Ellie's Place when they have, grieving children. Like I said, I think a lot of times children will just silence themselves if you don't give them the right avenue to speak about their feelings of grief. And I think that can most likely, especially when you're dealing with the death of a parent, be a real detriment.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, just as Ellie's Place mission states, is that dealing with grief effectively is incredibly important. I think right now in our current times, we are seeing more death and grief than ever. And that means that there's more children that are out there grieving that I have lost a family member or a friend. And so I think it's just really important to continue to let our community know that children don't have to grieve alone. Families don't have to grieve alone. Grief does not have to be a solo journey. There is support out there for you through Ellie's Place that is accessible through most of Southeast Michigan. There will be a location that is close enough. We drove 45 minutes every week and it was well worth it. And again, I don't want Ellie's Place to be a secret. I don't want Ellie's Place to be a best kept secret. I want every school and every community to know that grief does not have to be done alone, that children should not grieve alone, honestly. And so thank you for having us. I think it's been a really great way to get the word out for Ellie's Place. And again, how important it is, how much we need our community support also.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Bree, did you want to add anything?
I would, thank you for asking. Thanks, Michelle, too. So I just think to mention, what is the likelihood that a child or teen might experience death or loss? And there are statistics out there. So for the state of Michigan, 1 in 12 children will experience the death of a parent or sibling by the age of 18. Now, that's only death losses due to a parent or sibling. We know that we have deaths, Dana, you shared grandparents, friends, aunts, uncles. And so, as Michelle mentioned, right, we don't want these children and teens to feel like they are alone and that they're having to go through this traumatic life experience and just hold that all in, because unresolved grief is going to contribute to alarming rates of things, and they're going to manifest and come up and show up later in life. And so what we do at Ellie's Place is we provide a safe, compassionate space for children and teens and adults alike to share those feelings and to learn coping skills and to allow grief, death, and dying to become part of our language, and that's something that we're comfortable with, and so that these feelings are normal and encouraged. So just again, really want to thank both of you, and all of you. Michelle, thank you for also joining me today, and really appreciate the time to be able to share the work that we do.
I want to thank you both for sharing what a beautiful legacy that Ellie has left behind for her family, but all of the state of Michigan, really.
Yes.
If you have an idea for a parenting show topic or guest, talk to us on Twitter and Facebook at #CTN Ann Arbor.
For more on our programming and services, visit a2gov.org/CTN and visit youtube.com/CTN Ann Arbor to watch our full lineup. And remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for joining us on this adventure in parenthood.